One thing people need to realize is that we're in a lull period. With the election for the president was last year. There's no real cycle right now. This year's everyone kind of just like exhausted. 2022 is the midterms. 2023 is the presidential primary cycle, followed by 24, the presidential cycle. And that is going to be ramping up worse.
Absolutely.
More extreme than we saw. But I do want to show this story real quick. And the story itself, I think, is important. I don't think it's the most excitable story. It's from NBC. All children should wear masks in school this fall, even if vaccinated, according to Pediatrics Group. The American Academy of Pediatrics is calling the new guidance a layered approach. We had Steve Bannon on the show.
Nice.
He said on August 15th, when mothers start learning about what their children are being taught, there is going to be, a ruckus, or there's going to, I don't know the exact word, but you get the point. It's like people are going to lose it. And he's right. I think a lot of the critical race theory stuff is going to result in moms being shocked and angered. But this mask
it's already happening, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now, consider when kids are back in school, summer ends. I saw this story, and I saw it on Reddit. And I looked at the comments, because the first thing I thought when I saw that that schools wanted to make kids wear masks, even if they're vaccinated, my immediate thought was, there is no way even the establishment leftists, the people who march on a dime for the establishment, are going to be okay with this. Because even though we have seen to great lengths these people are willing to contort themselves, this will snap their brains like a rubber band. And I was right. Surprisingly, the top comments on Reddit, which is mostly leftist, were like, I can't do this anymore. I can't handle this. Yep. One response was, I'm a high school teacher. This is insane. I will not be the mask police. I can't handle this. And it was just inundated people saying, this is nuts. It's gone too far. We're losing control. But the funny thing is, they were trying to adhere to the narrative. We have to do it. But their brains were just at that point where the rubber band was going to snap. Seeing the person say, I'm a high school teacher and I just can't handle it anymore. And I'm like, whether they want to support the narrative or not, the rubber band is going to snap back. And then something's going to happen. I don't know what.
Yep.
Maybe it actually stabilizes things.
I see a lot of doom posting on Twitter from my tribe talking about, oh gosh, the left is going further on this and this, and the 1984 totalitarian, blah, blah, blah. We're all doomed and it's all over. And linear extrapolations, I think, are always naive and wrong because there are feedback loops. And as stuff gets crazier, more and more people start saying, I can't buy into this anymore. And I think that we are rapidly approaching that point. The cathedral or the political organization right now has this plan that has worked for them, and it's worked for 20 or 30 or 40 years, which is you bang more and more about racism, and it motivates the base, and it gets people out to march, and it motivates donations. And they did this for all 4 years of Trump. And there's a terrible thing. I mean, it's hilarious, but it's also terrible, which is that the word racist and the word Nazi have lost all power because, racism is a terrible thing and no one wants to be, called a racist if it's meaningful. And Nazis are, the second worst political thing after communism. And, that's terrible and no one wants to be called a Nazi. And so at first they're saying, okay, these literal Nazis marching down the streets are Nazis. And you're like, yes, they are. They're saying terrible things about Jews. That's terrible. And then next they're saying, this guy who's not a Nazi, but he's got some, really bad opinions as a Nazi. You're like, yeah, okay, I guess that's pretty Nazi-like. And then pretty soon, my half Nigerian friend Fred is being called a Nazi. I'm like, A, he's not a Nazi, and B, that word is now entirely meaningless.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
It's not about the word being meaningless. The word can mean whatever it wants. I just don't care.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You've done something amazing when half the population doesn't care anymore.
But it's not about half the population. It's not half the population. I don't care about what these leftist rage bait smear merchants care, for the same reason I don't care about what people in Liberia are saying about me. It's a different country, and it has nothing to do with me.
Right.
So when I see these people who I know live in Wally World and believe nonsensical garbage, I'm like, they can say whatever they want. I'm over it.
Yep.
I don't view them as the divide in this country has grown so great.
Right. There's two countries.
That it's
more
beyond,
than that.
It's beyond
like a shatter, and there's all these different fractals of
it is beyond two countries. It is beyond two countries. When I heard, this is the example I use every time, Joe Biden talking about lockdowns, when red states were doing the opposite, I was like, that's it. It is very clear that he does not view us as part of the conversation or as part of the country or as someone who needs to be talked to. So when I see someone in the mainstream media, NBC or whatever, say something, I'm like, why do I care what they think?
Yep.
It is not part of the world I live in. And I didn't start it. I'm just responding to it.
Absolutely. My friend Adam said something really interesting a month or two back, which is, I think his exact words were, I'm realizing more and more that I'm a patriot of a country that never really existed. And I think, if you look at Twitter and other places, people on the right are saying, effectively, I don't know what I believe in. I, believe in this 1950s world, but also that 1950s world was maybe more an artifact of marketing than reality.
Oh, yeah.
And people on the left, they march, but then the world isn't operating the way they think it's supposed to operate, and their models are broken. There's a huge cultural malaise or ennui or something going on because all of the old explanations and answers have broken down. And, Joe Biden isn't motivating anyone. There's no narratives that are motivating anyone. And we're discovering the new world right now.
It's true, man. We ended slavery, but China didn't. And we buy products from China that are getting made by slaves. So we're basically still supporting slavery.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we have companies that that have used sweatshop labor for a long time.
It's blatant. Like it is blatant structurally in the economy.
And I'll tell you this, because at Occupy Wall Street, they had a memorial for Steve Jobs. That to me was the funniest thing. Now it's not like the people of Occupy all came together and voted. Here, we all agree. But many people there set up a memorial because he died in October of 2011. And I was laughing at just like the absurdity of one of the most ruthless, cutthroat capitalist businessmen who exploited Chinese communist slave labor is being propped up by these people at Occupy. And I was there, and I'm just like, and you know what? I've long known, because I worked in nonprofits, that it's all marketing, it's all PR,
Yeah.
it's all an attempt to gain support. But I think what happens is the internet allows for, we used to have 5 TV channels or whatever.
3 if you're older. Yeah.
3, right? Yeah, and everyone just agreed with like the narrative coming from these channels.
Yeah, the Overton window was an inch wide.
That's right. Now with the internet, the Overton window extends for the most part from like the center right to the far left. It's kind of hilarious that's true. The mainstream will allow these conversations. They'll wag their finger at the center right.
Right. You're so
clap
naughty.
for the far left.
Right.
But anyway, the main point is that it allows the entirety of the political compass to exist now in the space, even if we can say the Overton window doesn't include the far right, the authoritarian right, and for some reason ANCAPs get lumped in there sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Overton window includes just enough Republicans that the cathedral, or the sort of central political organization can say, oh, we're tolerant. We accept everyone up to John McCain, and maybe Mitt Romney on a good day.
But regardless of what the cathedral thinks, there are online communities for literally every
Absolutely,
faction.
and it's glorious. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be much harder. It was much more centralized, more of a. Now it's evened out quite a bit. But I do think this is causing a lot of our problems, especially when, so we're seeing this shuffling, this great sorting algorithm is kind of happening. West Virginia is losing residents, right? And one of the stories I read was about a teacher. And she gave an interview, and she was like, what they're doing to the unions and how they treat us is absurd, and this state is racist, so I'm leaving. I'm going to Austin or something like that, or some other city. And I'm like, isn't it fascinating that in one of the West Virginia, I think, is the second most Trump supporting state from 2020. And you have the people who are Democrats outraged and leaving. Meanwhile, you have the more conservative types from cities outraged and leaving.
Right.
Everything's being sorted. Yeah. It's almost like we're in this big, sieve or whatever, and it's being they're shaking it, and some are falling through and some aren't.
Yeah.
So I wonder, the fascinating thing about this is, I've talked about Civil War quite a bit, and right now we have this poll showing the potential Balkanization. I did the math. 37.2% of the population is in favor of their region balkanizing.
My dad is a real centrist Republican, sort of Mitt Romney Republican, and I had the pleasure of seeing my folks over this past weekend after a year and a half because of COVID. And my dad, this sort of mainstream whatever media TV is telling me, he's talking about we need to break into 2 countries. And when you're looking at 75-year-old boomers who came up in the system, and they're saying they're sounding like some crazy neo-reactionary on Twitter. Man, the world's gotten strange.
But it's not neo-reactionary. It's 47% of Democrats on the West Coast.
Yep.
So what we're seeing with separation is, I'm not actually convinced it's going to just be, so one thing I've said recently is that I think we're more likely to break up than see civil war.
Yeah.
But I'll stress, with this great sorting that's happening, it's entirely possible we do see the country split along hard lines.
You know, we're definitely not going to see civil war because wars happen when you've got a lot of young men, and our population structure will not support a war. You know, there's just not enough cannon fodder. Neil Stephenson, a great science fiction author, one of my favorites, has had the sort of future history of loosely linked books. And he has sort of, you know, crazy red tribe rural areas and crazy blue tribe rural areas, and somehow they coexist. And I think that sometimes governments just get exhausted and don't have the political will to enforce hegemony. And, you know, I think that we're to some degree stepping into that world right now where we get soft secession. That, you know, maybe the tax dollars keep filing back to Washington and, you know, maybe the bomber bases still sit here, but we're not going to listen to laws we don't want to. And we've seen that with marijuana legalization at the state level.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/Timcast IRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.